нас не всі учасники змогли доєднатися.
Not all participants managed to join us, so I would like to have small changes in our agenda, and I'm happy to give a floor to Serhii Derkach, Deputy Minister of Communities and Territories Development of Ukraine. Yeah, I will try to be very concise and to express the position of the Ministry and our vision on this report, assessment of corruption risks, and our role in the recovery and construction process. At the very beginning, I have already mentioned that this is so crucial a case in the story with such deep analysis, with involvement so many authorities, because those risks that have been mentioned today that are covered in the report, we will definitely analyze them, but actually there are so many things which we have already known because they have been already on the table before, because even in the title of this presentation you can look at this story from one perspective or divide it into two parts. So the first part, that's actually risks in construction, so to say, and the second part, that's risks in the recovery process, because recovery wise it's very good to understand what do we call a recovery, what is a recovery, because speaking about the recovery of the kindergarten, okay, we say that's the recovery, but when we say that we have a damaged road, asphalt or damaged road which was not properly done before and which was not repaired in terms of capital repair. So do we call it recovery or not? So first of all, the state shall tell us what the recovery is, what are the specifics of the recovery projects. And here the key thing is first of all prioritization of those projects is the first part, and second thing, that's what will be the sources of funding for those projects. Like two key things. Speaking about risks, which have been mentioned today by colleagues, which are mainly related to the procedure of procurement, plus they're related to procedures in the capital repair sector or construction sector at large. And Yurii will tell you more about it, because the ministry works a lot on the procurement, understands risks and so on. I would like to develop on just a few things. The first thing is developing of the single all-national framework with terminology, relevant terminology. What is a recovery? How do we prioritize recovery projects? How do we cooperate with international partners? How do we apply BIM instruments which are key ones and shall be used for sure? Let's change the mic because the previous one didn't work properly. So that's what the state is facing right now. Now there is a law on the recovery, so the draft law on the recovery. So let's formulate it in the following words. So this draft law has been developed with differentiation of Ukraine into four macro regions. So why did we do it like this? Because it will allow us to prioritize in a very transparent manner all recovery and reconstruction projects, and will allow us to understand our priorities, the key priorities. Of course, it's not only related to the recovery projects, it's also related to other issues, for example, specifics of taxation in those four macro regions, because it's also about involvement of international financial funds. So we have so many different correlated components. Just would like to mention that this draft law has already been formulated, has already been forwarded to other state authorities for consideration. It will be sure brought to public discussions, and I would like to kindly invite everyone for qualitative discussions on this draft law, because indeed we shall identify what the recovery is, what the recovery projects are, how they shall be funded. The first thing. The second part, that's under influence of the ministry, that's on the development of the policies, and that's of course about tools, specifically digital tools. I would like to develop on in a very concise manner those issues of the policies which are on the side of the ministry. So we have anti-corruption program. We have a huge section in this program dedicated to construction risks. Half of them have already been implemented. Now we are working on analysis and monitoring of how this anti-corruption program has been implemented and what shall be done within the new anti-corruption program for the ministry. We will definitely take into consideration the research that has been presented today, but I would like to kindly invite everyone, all stakeholders, into the development process of our anti-corruption program, because it's a very important thing. And the last component, that's digitalization. DREAM system has already been mentioned today. That's a unique tool. We have been working a lot with this tool. We pay a lot of attention to it. As you know, the DREAM system has been developed also with involvement, with support of RISE Coalition, where more than 50 NGOs contribute their work. There are so many different experts on anti-corruption and on recovery and reconstruction. That's why we think that this is a very good example of cooperation between NGO experts, environment, and the state, a part of the DREAM system, which has been created in order to have a general picture on the recovery and reconstruction sector. The DREAM also becomes a crucial and integral component of this sector through its installation in different legislative documents, the first thing. And secondly, now we have been very actively working on the scaling up of these components. We have been working on two modules. The first module is for the public, in order to ensure a possibility to submit different motions, inquiries, and applications for recovery and construction using the DREAM tool. So it could be a very transparent tool for with involvement of the public. And the second module, which has already been developed for now, it has already been tested in April and May. Now it's in the testing stage of exploitation. That's a module for donors coordination platform to allow donors to be actively involved into the reconstruction and recovery projects, for them to see what projects are needed, what prioritized, where funds of our international partners go to, who is responsible for what are the roles of different countries who are involved in specific projects. And the last thing regarding digitalization, and it's already been mentioned by Olena, and we also underline that the key risks appearing in the construction sector could be mitigated and reduced through the through making processes more effective. And a part of legislative work here, we're also working on development of the YDSB, so it's unified state database on construction. And here we have very specific plans how to submit online applications quicker in order to reduce the number of denials, in order to increase the level of automatization in system, to synchronize the system with the DIA system. So we have so many different plans which we are implementing on the technical level nowadays to make this system effective and influential in terms of mitigation of corruption risks. That's all from my side. And again, I would like to underline how it's important to work together, how it's important to have joint understanding in terms of effective, transparent, accountable recovery of Ukraine from our side, but at the same time quick recovery, because Yevhen gave a very real example in Kharkiv. We have such examples every night. I think you have already read that this night there was a huge attack at Odessa region and other regions. What does it tell us? It tells us that we shall develop such tools which will allow us to rebuild and recover very quickly. Of course, looking at international experience, looking at risk assessment, we realize that if procedures are sustainable and very well defined and described document in detail, it allows us to prevent corruption risks much more effectively. But at the same time, we understand that we need to rebuild housing for our citizens as soon as possible, to give them all conditions to live properly in their settlements and generally in our country. So we need to find this balance between rebuilding quickly, but of course without corruption risks. Thank you so much, Serhii, that you dwelt upon so in detail regarding the work of the ministry and your proactive leadership in terms of transparency in the reconstruction process. And I'm happy to give a floor to Yurii Sverba, Deputy Head of the State Agency for Reconstruction Development of Infrastructure of Ukraine. I'm sorry to remind you about our agenda. We have next session, so please try to stick to 5 minutes speech. Hi to everyone. So thank you. First of all, thank you so much to the NACP leadership for their approach, which they demonstrated during the strategical analysis of the corruption risks. And before the publication of this research, there was a closed meeting or discussion where I needed to report and partially be responsible for all contracting authorities in construction sector and recovery sector in Ukraine. But we were very open in our discussion, speaking about corruption risks, which are also related to the recovery agency and service. We do not hide that, yes, there are high corruption risks there, and implementation of infrastructure projects is very correlated with corruption risks. And in any state authority, including NACP, they have their own anti-corruption program. So our key task is to focus on mitigation of those corruption risks, because anyway they will be there. So Serhii has already mentioned that I'm going to tell about the procurement procedures. Together with colleagues, we have been establishing a centralized procurement institution in the recovery sector. The key aim of it is to mitigate corruption risks. So those risks which already exist, that there are no equal criteria applied for the contracts. It's about standardization of procedures. Just last week, there was a round of the open public discussions with the market in order to identify correctly terms of reference and technical documentation for procurement, a big procurement of modular shelters, and we plan to apply the same approach to other big procurements, including BIM procurement, so on. The second segment I would like to touch upon, that's the digitalization procedure, including digitalization of procurement procedures. Today we plan to implement a risk identification system for procurements, including procurements of our services, because as of now all the procurement procedures of our services are built in such a way that project documentations are analyzed by relevant recovery agency division with involvement of external expert, and afterwards publication of tender documentation is made on the Prozora website. Now we would like to integrate into this process one more element, automatic system of corruption risks identification. And to wrap up, I would like to suggest to apply the same approach while developing anti-corruption strategy and state anti-corruption program, to have an open dialogue with central executive authorities, to have an open dialogue with experts, external experts, and other stakeholders, because in at large, we need to have discussions on the anti-corruption strategy and state anti-corruption program, and we shall not make this process we shall, from the side of the power of those who have power, or those who so or as contradiction, because otherwise it would be only creating chaos. So we are ready to contribute to developing of the anti-corruption strategy and state anti-corruption program, and we are sure that this event will be very important for future work of our recovery agency. Thank you so much for your contribution, and I'm happy to give a floor to one more speaker, Yevhen Kostenko, Deputy Director of the Department for Appealing Decisions in the field of Public Procurement and the Monopoly Committee of Ukraine. Good morning, Yevhen. We are happy to give a floor to you. Yeah, I think that we have already touched the procurement topic, so it would be great to hear your opinion on the matter of appealing of such decisions. Hi, my name is Yevhen Kostenko. I'm Deputy Director of the Department for Appealing Decisions of the Antimonopoly Committee. So actually what we are dealing with is that the appealing authorities consider complaints in the procurement sector, and of course it's related also to recovery processes. So, first of all, as far as I know, maybe it's the first authority which is being established in terms of works, because usually centralized authorities were mainly related to procurement of goods. So definitely it will be quite a significant process, and maybe it will be quite a new process to some extent. So it's important to take into consideration practices of controlling authorities, and I hope practices of appealing authorities, because we have been working since 2010s, so we have elaborated already some kind of practice in the appeals and challenges. So key things which shall be mentioned in this context, which have been the same for more than 10 years. Some mistakes made by contracting authorities, some lessons learned. Of course, first of all, attention shall be paid to the stage of development of tender documentation. So what are the components of works, when there are some goods mentioned, there are also some generators and so on. Sometimes those requirements are formulated in such a manner in order for only one bidder to win, and so these things have been the same for all these 10 years, so they shall be always under attention. Speaking about some things which show to us some possible interaction between procuring authorities and bidders, that's when procuring authorities abuse their powers to identify a winner, even despite of the fact that those winners do not comply with the requirements. We have quite a huge practice elaborated, and it's mentioned in the report of the Monopoly Committee and report of the Commission of the Appealing Authority. They are published on the website of the committee, and it includes the extended list of preconditions for violations identified by us, both from side of bidders and contracting authorities. Going back to the recovery and construction topics, as far as I know, there is a project with planned with support of the funds of the European Investment Funds Bank, and as far as I know, European Investment Funds Bank is also interested for us to be involved. We are ready to take this responsibility on us, and take into consideration the practice of our authority as an appealing body. I think that such potential corruptional risks will be also mitigated with procedures. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Unfortunately, we are quite limited in our schedule. We are not able to accept any questions right now, but I think that possibility for a Q&A session will be available during coffee break, and thank you for your description of the topic. And now I give a floor to Bohin, Director of the Construction Control Department of the State Audit Service of Ukraine. Hi, and thank you so much for invitation. The corruption risks in the reconstruction and recovery sector requires work which has been done and is being done with joint cooperation with NACP. And the key problems that we are identifying and describing right now, that's only top of the iceberg. We do not cover here topics related to road constructions. They're also very important, and the changes introduced since 2022, I mean since the full-scale invasion, unfortunately we see that not all of those changes were aiming at having more effective decisions and mitigating corruption risks and having more transparent construction with standard documents and so on. It's related to all stages of the construction process, starting with plannings and tenders, procurements and implementation.
Let me focus on the aspects that we are most concerned about as a state financial control body that impact the settlements and the prices. Starting in 2021, when Verkhovna Rada made amendments to the law on pricing, and now after amalgamation of the ministries, the Ministry of Recovery is the only body that develops the policy in the field of construction and also approves the orders on pricing in the field of road and civil construction. In the course of the audit of the Ministry of Infrastructure, there were some critical comments regarding development of the structure, framework, approaches to pricing, the changes that make it possible now for contractors not to sign contractual documents at the different stages, and also that's about maintaining the price database for construction materials. So the suggestions have been submitted to the ministry. Hopefully that will be taken into account. There will be further analysis and comments on violations detected in the field of construction. The next item, that's the experimental resolutions that are not efficient. We believe that's reflected in our reports. In particular, if we speak about recovery in Borodyanka, in Posad Pokrovsky, the energy protection measures, energy sector. So we see that experimental projects have not been fully implemented, and facilitation of some procedures, above all, that's about the procedure for funding of capital construction, because the resolution doesn't cover those and do not make it possible to allocate big advance payments. So they have not resulted in any efficient outcomes. Definitely that's not going faster. And also, if we speak about implementation in Borodyanka, because this is like the red line, and we keep monitoring that. Currently in Borodyanka, not a single square meter has been commissioned, and the cost is 80,000 hryvnias. And since land is free and local governments do their best to support the customers, this is wrong. And we need to already start commissioning, passing to people the housing that they need. Hence, the next issue and the risk, that's the weak institutional capacity of the customers. In cabinet resolutions, now they indicate the specific customers who are going to use budget funds for recovery. And upon the suggestion of the agency, the government authorizes the recovery services that have never had that experience. And again, as we see in Borodyanka, they didn't take into account VAT funds, and then the processes had to be suspended for 6 months to conduct the expertise, the analysis, and this idea of facilitated procedures because of the customer effect did not make it possible to really operationalize that. And general coordination, control, and selection of construction projects, that leaves much to be desired. In the process of audit, we could see that sometimes they build or recover the sites that were not affected. So where, for example, they build kindergartens where there is no need for them because there are no children there. and regions that really require recovery, for some reason no funds are allocated for them. So at the first phase of our joint work and your research, I've highlighted the issues that it is important to focus on correcting for the bodies, and of course this is direct path towards saving funds and efficient use of funds. Thank you for highlighting these practical issues that confirm identified risks, and I'm happy to pass the floor to the next speaker, Olena Larionova, Head of Infrastructure Control Division of the Department of Control and Audit of Energy, Natural Resources and Infrastructure of the Accounting Chamber. Dear colleagues, welcome. It's hard to add much to what has been mentioned already regarding risks and the legal framework. Moreover, as it has been mentioned in the presentation, in the analysis, 2 reports of the Accounting Chamber have been used. All in all, speaking about the external audit and our topic today, maybe we should congratulate ourselves on 2 aspects. We understand corruption risks, and that's very valuable. Also, this is something irreversible, because after a year with the, well, it will be shameful to speak about the situation if it is unchanged. So speaking about the topic, I'm very happy that Olena Shuliak, head of the committee, and my colleagues today have highlighted several concrete items, and this is the legislative framework that, apart from the special legislation in the field of construction, is somehow based on the legislation that regulates budget relations, and also, now microphone. We could recall that since August there will be no longer the economic code, and we mostly deal with economic relations that are based on implementation of contracts. That's another risk in that situation. Speaking about the work of the Accounting Chamber as an external audit body, all in all, the focus for understanding the recovery process, so the focus of our audit since 2023. Well, here I agree with my colleagues that when we speak about recovery, we can speak about anything in our country now, and this is often the reason to manipulate. I agree with everything that the colleagues have said already, but let me mention that all the reports relating to, so all the audit reports where the recovery aspects were addressed and use of funds for recovery, they do not include any limitations in the part of access to information. They are available from the website of the Accounting Chamber. So I also agree with colleagues from the State Audit Service, Roman and Dmitro, that we are evolutionary, starting from 2023, researching the aspects of recovery. We see some evolution there, but we understand that this is a significant pool of work that is always human focused, and the amount of work that happens in the course of recovery is never ending in our situation. But in any case, we see that every authority needs to comply with their functions. It's hard for auditors to check the quality of construction work. So by now the state needs to think about some transparent and flexible framework that would make it possible to conduct architectural control in that area to prevent some aspects that, as Ala has adequately mentioned, that it makes no sense to address after we lose state funds. Regarding other risks that could have an effect, we remember that these projects, they are global construction projects, and they are performed not within several months. That may take a year or several years. If we consider the list of investment projects, we see that these are the projects that were launched back in 2024. And each time financing of these projects impacts the next planning of the budget, which undermines not only adequate functioning of the customer or the body that allocates funds, but also principles of the budget system. That's another consequence. So of course that's all in the focus of our attention. It's good that the state understands this process with the help, with the support of the functional body. So the state understands how the process goes from top to bottom. And due to our NICP colleagues, due to our activities, controlling authorities' activities, we can see what's going on, starting from the policies that are implemented by the authorities to actual implementation by customers and at the local level regarding these facilities being rebuilt. And also to add to what has been mentioned, that's true that, of course, conducting any kind of control in the field of recovery is very important for the society. If we speak about the accounting chamber, we remember that accounting chamber conducts the audits for compliance, efficiency, and financial audits. And of course, where these functions face some complications, that's due to the situation as described by the colleague from Kharkiv. Unfortunately, well, it basically makes little sense to assess something that is being destroyed basically on the daily basis. Hence, we try to revise our approaches. So let me just add that currently the accounting chamber is conducting 2 audits on recovery. Unfortunately, I cannot yet comment on the results of those, but one of the audits is about experimental projects. So these reports will be drafted during October and November, then they will be published in the website in the public domain, but we hope that there will be no special regimes applied, so you will be able to have access to that, so I will not take any more of your time. Thank you, Olena, for describing the issue, and of course the role of audit in the field of risk prevention can hardly be overestimated, and the fact that representatives of the audit service participate in this event proves that the audit is an important advisor and partner and helps all stakeholders to work preemptively and to identify risks at the initial stages. I'm happy to pass the floor to Oleksii Drozdzenko, Deputy Head of Sumy Regional State Administration, Head of the Regional Military Administration for Digital Development, Digital Transformation, and Digitalisation. We know that Sumy region, as well as Kharkiv region, is very close to the area of hostilities, so it would be important to hear how you see the challenges in your region. Now, microphone. Let's replace it. So thank you so much for organizing this event, for the opportunity to participate, and let me speak briefly about Sumy region. This is a border region close to the border. We have the longest border with the aggressor country, 560 kilometers, unfortunately, and it's the hostilities are very active. It's very scary at night, and we have dynamic contact line. You follow deep state assessments, and let me express gratitude to my colleague from Kharkiv. He has highlighted all the major issues and the tasks that we set for ourselves. We are very similar. So what we are doing now? Due to the President of Ukraine, the government, the cabinet, international donors and partners, and together with the communities and businesses, above all, we focus on supporting our defenders, and that's about a lot of work for building fortifications. This is what we have been doing and will continue to do. The second priority is recovery of, above all, critical infrastructure and then all kind of civilian infrastructure. And today we have mentioned repeatedly that the more ambitious infrastructural projects or facilities are, the more interesting it is to engage so the more attractive it is for corruption risks, and a lot of people kind of professionalize in this area. And I absolutely agree with the chair of NACP that this is a natural process. Ukraine is no exception. We see that globally that happens, and us Ukrainians, you know, we are very inventive, and there we may be ahead of the international situation. So I'm grateful to NACP for presenting the whole kaleidoscope of risks and areas to work. And speaking from the regional level, I can confirm that that's true, that these risks are relevant, and let me mention several examples. Our commission makes the decision, for example, to build a gym, and we say that it is intended for veterans, that it is inclusive, and this is, well, everybody is inspired, but I know that this is a very problematic area. There is no logistic. The public transport stops at 6 p.m. and then these people who have inclusive needs, there are 2 of them. And if it were the last district where they need this gym, that would be okay. But this is the first gym in the city. And then I started discussing maybe we need to look for a more logical location. And these people will be provided with the services of social taxi for people who need inclusive services. They say no, because all the other locations do not correspond to the election precinct of the respective politician. So this is not quite classical corruption, not payback or bribe. This is about that millions from the budget may be misused, just because there is also some non-commercial benefit. So this is again another local case, not yet a case, but this is quite hot. Several weeks ago, we've been looking forward to that resolution on remote analysis of destroyed facilities. This is what's needed. People are looking forward to that, and what regional administrations along the border do. They will update the statuses of the territories as where there are active facilities, where it's possible to work or not. Of course, that's important to do that. That's logical. And I see how some agrarian cartels are trying to develop some suggestions, like in some towns, in some settlements, like hectares of land need to be covered because they have this dream that there will be another tax mode. And again, this is not about bribes or something like that, that kind of benefits. That's about that the budget, millions from the budget may be misused. Now, speaking about the work of regional administrations along the border in Sumy, in other regions, and to add to what Yevhen has mentioned, we also have the problem of shortage of human resources. It's logical that for security reasons, people prefer to go to the central regions, to western regions of Ukraine, but there is a lot of work because along the border there are more distractions. And those who stay and keep working, they are overloaded with work. We are doing a lot of positive work. recovery и відновлення. And we have thousands of applications, and they've been addressed, thousands of housing certificates after construction, 1.5 billion, and the enemy is adding to that on the daily basis. But what does the administration has? We have quite an efficient mechanism. I mean, the working group on transparency and accountability. That's a cool thing. We've had it for 2 years now, and it includes all the problematic cases. Well, law enforcement agencies present them there. There are various reactions. Some are positive, where the construction companies immediately respond and reduce prices. There are some negative responses where regarding quick criminal proceedings. And to summarize, let me say that considering that we are very busy with work, if we so we have to deal with our routine duties, but we also need to take this principal possession, and we need to focus to allocate time for fighting corruption risks, because without that the risks may get greater.
Because bigger risks are to minimize and reduce the trust to the sources, both external and internal. But first, I'm not going to continue on those risks because lacking of the competence. But thank you so much to hear us, that you support us. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, and that you have mentioned identified risk, giving examples of your specific region. And we are moving from the national level to local level. We have already partially touched the regional level. So thank you so much to all the speakers of the first panel discussion for their positions. And I kindly invite the second panel representatives on rebuilding on the ground, challenges of overcoming corruption in regions and communities.